Hello. When I make these beats up, sometimes I've got an idea how I want to do them, and I kind of play about with them. It could be some kind of theme I had in mind, or I guess most of them I like are a certain rough kind of style. You know, the heavier bass lines. So, for example, I started this one. Something I was playing about with this, and then as it happened, I was changing the different. I was changing the bass around a bit to see what interesting sounds I can get from it, which is, as you'll know, is a big part of how I make my beats. It's how it sounds, rather than necessarily what notes you use. There's a big part of it I think which is more aesthetic, which I'll try and find as while comboing it with the right notes. So, for example, this one started off with a bass probably a bit like this, which does actually sound delicious. But I've re-put that in as that for the bass, because the actual bass I was using, which was a little bit like that, it wasn't the same. I kind of tweaked it enough where it kind of turned into like a kind of lead melody almost, so which was like this. But it's got a real, I don't know if you can hear that. Listen. It's got a kind of almost like nasal quality to it. But so that was the bass. However, it sounded really good like that. So I thought, right, well, rather than, I've got to stick to this, I've got to stick to this, I'll literally go with the flow. So if I've got an idea of what I would like, then I'll just go with the flow with it. So for that one, whether I've just changed the bass with that nasally type sound, that then becomes that layer towards it on the beat, and then I'll just go back in and kind of recreate the bass. So I think it was this. Maybe I duplicated it, I think. But then I changed it around, so it's not the same beat. I was kind of exploring different sounds, because now that's got that higher sound. Now I'm using that higher sound. I don't want stuff that's going to clash, so it has to kind of fit in the whole soundscape of the different frequencies I'm using. So there's a bit of, I've taken that off on the highs a bit, so to help it sit better. But you still got some of the growl in there, so that's still coming through. But it's important, I think, when we're scratching, especially as this is for scratch music specifically. It's not like, I don't know, a rapper or anything like that. This is specifically for scratch music. Then it's important that we think of what sounds we're going to be scratching in and how those sounds are going to come in. So you've got space for those frequencies, and generally, as we know, most people just use R for the main part, but you've got to kind of think, is it vocals or whatever are you putting in? So yeah, the initial bass line got shifted to that one, but it works really well, and then I can build up. Then I can build up some of the drum patterns around that. Sometimes I'll start with the bass. Usually I'll start with the drums, and then kind of work it in there. And I kind of think of it a bit like as if you're putting on, how if you do a jigsaw, you're putting down kind of just pieces of the jigsaw on the table. You don't necessarily know exactly which bit's going to fit, but they're just around, and you're going to maybe try a few things out. Does it work? No, but the idea is you put the pieces onto the onto the board, and then you kind of work it out from there. And then things start to form, and then as it's going, I'm kind of changing stuff all the time, and then it's forming into something else. Then I might change the snares, I might add a bit to the snare, I might change the position of it, I might even lift the tempo, I might lower the tempo. It just starts kind of formulating of how I would like it. So for example, on this, there's like a little tail end on that bass, and it can also, depending on what is on the bass, I mean, really, you got to be careful with putting, reverbs and whatever on the bass. Is probably not a good idea. Depending on what it is and depending on what you're using it for. But sometimes it can lead you into like a certain melody or a certain way of doing it where it starts to take shape. It's giving you suggestions of how to put things in. It's leading the suggestions of how the track is formed. You might try and then change them. It's not going to be exact, but my main thing is that I just continue until it sounds good, depending on if it's good there and then, or it might change a bit later. But at the time, I kind of always think it's good, because what the hell is the point in doing it otherwise? But having said that, I could go back to it a week later and I think, was that as good? I don't know. But then I'll have some scratch practices, and then at the time when I've done it, and I think, that was good. And generally, all the beats you hear from me when I put them out are always one after each other. I don't kind of like, I'm going to sit on this one or whatever. 99% of the time, it's just I put a beat out and then, go on the next one. So if you heard yesterday's one, this is what this one goes into. So again, using that new kind of nasally industrial sound. This is over 150 BPM. This is what it's kind of sounding like. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Yeah. This flows really well together. Like I said, I've changed the drum pan hits. Make sure it all knits together. And all the times make it like almost like a kind of, it's all the time like an addictive loop. You want to keep listening to that loop, even if you're not scratching over it. You've got that addictive style of beat where you just kind of want to scratch over it. So this breaks down a little bit before the whole loop comes back in. Kind of a verse, I guess, and then a longer chorus. But it's going to kick back in. Here we go. And that's the main kind of theme for it. I've just been scratching some vocals over it, so it works really well. It works really well for vocals, so you're going to hear that one. I'll put that out, I don't know, maybe sometime next week, or certainly before I put the actual tracks in themselves. But this is sounding really, really good. I haven't used an R over it yet. I was just doing some vocals, and the vocals were really hitting. Playing about with different syllables, which can totally change up the style of the cuts over the top. So it's going very well, that one. And then like hits wise, you've got the kind of kick. It's got a bit of residue on that, should we say? Nice bit of rattle, and then got some kind of high version of the snare and like a lower hit, but the work really well in tandem, like it was saying. Yeah. I hope you like the longer video as well.